Alright kids, so today we're going to be going over making a Gantt chart in R. So first off, as usual, we're going to need our data set. So I'm going to go pull something from Excel, click that a couple hundred times, browse, and just wherever your data set is hiding. Try to keep organized with billions of folders, but you know, things happen. So we have our data set, but before we import it, we're going to want to play around with a couple of things in here. So as you might notice, start date, that's not a date. It's in character, so it's reading the date that I put kind of as an equation. So we're going to just want to convert that to date real quick. And we're going to want to make duration numeric just so it reads it properly. And we're going to repeat this process a couple different times. So end date we want as an actual date. We can skip over a couple of these variables, get to actual start. Just clicking away. And actual duration we also want numeric. Now for complete, underway, and incomplete, I'm not sure if it matters, but just in case, we want to make them numeric, because I know that numeric works the way we need it to. So this is probably the most expansive data set that I've used in terms of number of variables and number of observations. So this is going to be really fun. So we have our data uploaded into the window. Now we're going to slide over here and go over the actual code. But I'm going to run the whole thing just so we have a point of reference for what some of the things do, as opposed to, you know, just imagining, using our imaginations. So it takes a while to load because my data set, I use the Cerberus project. It occurs over 5 years, so I have a crap ton of data sitting up here. There's 55 tasks occurring over the 5 years. And we'll get into what's down here in a moment. So for right now, we're just going to shrink that and shrink that to make these about equal sizes. And now go through the code. So library, you know, allows us to use the different libraries. Plotly is what we'll mainly be using in order to create the Gantt chart. Had to install that. Library read Excel, it allows it to read the Excel file. So we're going to attach the Gantt chart data set that we made. And because I don't like typing out Gantt chart all the time, push that into Gantt. So we're just going to be using Gantt rather than Gantt chart the whole time. So we got Gantt up here with the $, which means it's going to go into this data set and grab this variable. That variable is start date. And we're going to basically convert it into a different date format. So take the date and assign it, or go into this data set, grab this date, and assign it this format. So we're going to go year, month, and then day. Don't have to do that. If we switched it up, it'd be perfectly fine. So that's there. Next, we're going to go with client, and you'll see that Cerber draft. That actually is the kind of subtitle of the Gantt chart. You can put it as whatever you want, and it'll change this portion of the title, the Cerber draft portion. So you can put your project's name or your client's name or whoever's name, really. Colors, so this changes the overall color scheme of the data points in your chart. So our color, brewer pal, so this whole little section basically helps you choose a color based on the number of resources. So we have 3 different colors here. One of them is really tiny, really hard to see. Oh, there it is. It's like Sasquatch. So we've got red, blue, and green in here. And set 2 is what's causing them to be the shade. If we were to make it set 1, we would get a completely different set of colors. And because I like set 1 better, I'm just going to run that now. Shrink that. So that's going to change in a minute. But moving on, so we're going to take Gantt color, or Gantt, and then go into and grab the variable color. And basically that just tells it how many different colors to grab. So we have 3 different observation types in color. And so we're going to push the factor Gantt resource that we made up here and labels color. So now you can see that they're red, blue, and a different shade of green, but the colors that they correspond with got switched up a bit. But I like this brighter color scheme better. Moving on, we're going to take this P and we're going to use Plotly, like right here, to initialize an empty plot. So taking Plotly and pushing that into P, we're going to use P a lot, but we're going to do a couple different things. We're going to make several tasks, make them obvious. We want the axis dates handled, all that stuff. All that's pretty much done in this following section. So down here we have for I in 1, and going into the whole data set, minus 1 observation, because in our Gantt chart we have the titles, so there's 55 observations that we want, minus the title section. So for all 55 of these tasks, we want to add a thick line plot. So basically this will be our base for the Gantt chart. So this X equals the Gantt start date and the Gantt start date plus the duration. So that determines the length of this, and it would be a whole lot easier if you could see the difference in sizes. So basically it just takes the x-axis and extends them depending on the start date plus the duration. Y equals C I plus I, so it's basically your, or not I plus I comma I. So it basically just goes in and for your y-axis assigns one of these bars to each task. So mode lines, we basically want them to be lines. I imagine if we were to change this into something else, it would give us different shapes, perhaps. So line equals list color, and here we come back and use that Gantt color that we created. That corresponds with the different sets, and the width equals 20. That's how far up and down maybe it goes, because it's still associated with a Y, I think. And show legend is false. So we have the option to have a legend here that would show what each of the colors means and things like that. We don't really need that, so we can keep that false. Hover info text basically means that we can have this nice little tooltip when we hover over it, and when we're not hovering over it, it's gone. So moving on, our actual tooltip, so text basically is referencing that. So we're going to paste in the phase that we want. Just going to leave this here. We have the task, the start date, the duration in days, whether or not it had a deliverable, who's responsible for the project, and the status. Now the status part is really interesting because we incorporated an if-then statement. And so if the project is completed, it will have an actual start and an actual duration, but if the project is incomplete, it will not have those. So moving on, we have this stupid evaluate thing, which a couple of different sources I found said it's needed to avoid lazy loading. I have no idea what that means. We could literally get rid of equals true, we could make it false, we could write our names here, and it would, you know, still run. But the second you get rid of evaluate, all hell breaks loose and your chart breaks, and it's just not fun. So, moving on. Oh, an example of that if-then statement where it's actually true is down here. If you look at the last three rows, status complete and actual start and actual duration. So, moving on, we have our layout, and this is focusing on making the chart more presentable, how tall it is, how wide it is, what color scheme it uses, and whether or not you have a legend for the chart in and of itself. So we have our x-axis list. We don't want it to show grid lines because that would just be too overwhelming. This color scheme, these tiny tick marks. Tick font is list color, so basically this the tooltip will be the same color as the associated data point, and color we can just drop that in there. And y-axis, actually no, tick font is the, sorry, x-axis is font color, so tick font white is that hex code, and the same thing for the y-axis, the color appears here and it's the same hex code, so they're the same color. Now we scroll over a bit. For the y-axis, our tick mode is in an array, so it just goes from smallest to largest. Our tick intervals are 1. If we had it at a different number, it would skip, so let's say tick intervals are 2. So we would have like every 2 tasks being shown. And in-row Gantt basically tells R that we want the whole data set. And tick text, unique Gantt number, so it gives it the specific number rather than writing out the entire task statement. And some of these are pretty long, so we don't want that. Moving on, this will probably be done in 2 videos. We have our, oh no, we can lightning round it. Annotations, basically the little legend here in this corner, we can annotate the graph. List reference, X reference, paper, and paper. So just, I think this works to make it appear on how you would appear on a sheet of paper, probably. I don't know. X and Y coordinates are based on a domain of 0 to 1, so anything higher than this will kind of muck it up a bit. But here as well. So our x equals 0.8, so it's pretty far over here, and our y equals 0.1. So if you were to imagine a grid, it's essentially 8 spaces over and 1 space up. So then we have our actual text. So we have our completed tasks as the label, and we're basically telling it to go in and calculate from the data set how many tasks were marked as complete and take the sum of that, and just draw a little division sign and then over the total amount of tasks. So in-row Gantt, you should be familiar with that. It's the total number of tasks. So we have our neat little legend here. It actually does add up to 55, so that works. So we have the tasks underway and the tasks yet to start. And then we have the font color. So we can make it this weird yellowish using 12-point size. And that's the alignment inside of the box, the imaginary grid lines that it's in. So then we have list reference, paper, and paper, and this is for the title up here. So once again, we're going to have it at 0.1 on the x-axis and 1 on the y-axis, anchor it left, basically like left justifying, do the text, paste, project Gantt chart, so there's that actual like title thing, this was in the video, comma client, and we made that all the way at the top up there. Font, you should be familiar with that. It's that white-ish color. It's a slightly different white. I don't know if you can tell on your screen from that, but we want it 20 size font and Times New Roman text. You can tell because Times New Roman is a serif font, while the rest of this is a sans serif font. We have the same left alignment, and so this parentheses closes that off from the rest of it. And the plot background color, we made it black, which is this area here, and the plot paper color, which is this outer area, is also black. And that's how you make a Gantt chart in R. Finally.